In this segment, we're going to review executing the change management plan. The purpose is to address the implementation processes for performing the change activities by monitoring, measuring, and controlling delivery against baseline plans. Change management plan defines how internal controls will be applied. It involves managing people, stakeholders, and sponsors, and other resources while developing employee competencies through learning, development, and knowledge transfer. Executing the change management plan involves alignment of strategic objectives, risk identification and mitigation, and modification of the plan as needed. First, let's look at executing, managing, and monitoring implementation of the change management plan. This requires that all resources, strategies, timelines, communications, learnings combine to carry out the intended purpose of the change management plan. It applies the processes identified through assessments and analysis to the needs of completing tasks and activities in the change management plan. Executing the resource plan involves the coordination of finances, people, information, and physical resources as necessary to ensure delivery of the resource plan. Financial resources management means that during the execution, the planned budget for the change will be controlled so that accountable spending to meet the deliverables can take place. It may be necessary to review the planned budget in light of additional information as execution begins. This may require an increase, decrease, or reallocation of budget between spending categories, executed through a controlled request process and approved by appropriate stakeholders. Spending process should be documented and understood by all involved, especially those providing control over the spending. Controls will include type and amount of spending. Regular reports of spending against budget should be prepared for senior stakeholders to ensure transparency. Human resources management is a strategic function for identifying the most effective use of people. Expected benefits can be delayed, diminished, or never realized if the proper human resources are not available when they need to deliver and embed the change. Resource availability conflicts may occur due to competing priorities, coinciding tasks, or unavoidable circumstances. These conflicts may require rescheduling activities and could result in change in resource requirements for current or subsequent activities. Procedures should be established to identify such shortages, facilitate resource reallocation, and reduce the likelihood and consequence of resource availability conflicts. Specific role definitions should be defined along with the required skill sets, experience levels, and engagement durations. The engagement processes for different types of resources, for example, permanent employees, contractors, and consultants, need to be fully defined, understood, and documented to enable execution of the human resources plan. Human resources should be recruited, selected, and oriented to the project and integrated with the change team in order to build change capacity, capability, and support the resources plan. Information resources management involves a systematic process for creating, storing, sharing, and disseminating data, records, documents, and reports related to the change management effort. Processes should be established for authorizing which stakeholder groups can create, review, update, or delete certain types of records, documents, and reports. It's expected and acceptable that confidential and other types of records, documents, and reports would not be accessible to stakeholders impacted by a change. Information repositories, for example, electronic file sharing systems, collaborative websites, physical documents, can provide appropriate security access for specific stakeholder groups. Organization resources that may provide assistance include the Information Technology Services function and the Legal Records Retention function. Physical resources management involves ensuring the availability of suitable facilities, equipment, and supplies. The primary functions include identifying what is required and ensuring that suppliers provide equipment and materials needed to deliver the change. It also involves managing the purchasing relationship, which includes negotiating with suppliers to reach agreements that provide value and meet organizational requirements, keeping accurate records of materials, and taking appropriate action in the event of problems with the materials. Processes should be established to monitor physical resources and their performance. These processes will ensure the standards of service and delivery are maintained, physical resources are used efficiently, and suppliers are delivering desired activities and outcomes. Resources such as buildings, rooms, technology, and other physical needs should be acquired to support the execution of the plan. Physical resources must meet the needs specified during planning and cover areas such as quality, quantity, and duration. They should be engaged or required through agreed-upon documented control processes to ensure that needs are met and values obtained. Inputs include change management plan, project schedule and plan, resource plan. Outputs include change management plan, financial resources update or impact reports, human resources update or impact reports, information resources update or impact reports, and physical resources update impact reports. Now let's look at executing the communication plan. The success of change management requires effective implementation of the communication plan. Executing the established communication plan involves the audience and its specific characteristics, for example, the size of the organization, location of workers, and level of change resistance. It serves as the basis for customizing the message and delivery methods. The message should be crafted considering the culture of the stakeholders and organization, be aligned with the objective for each communication event. When effective, the stakeholders are able to build awareness, establish understanding, and define core responsibilities around the delivery of messages. Delivering of messages are delivered through the method deemed most effective for the communication. Further, messages are delivered at a specific phase in the project to ensure that stakeholders receive the correct messages at the correct time. Communication subject matter experts may provide guidance in delivering the communication and regularly assess effectiveness. The feedback channels and mechanisms identified in the communication strategy should be executed as they provide stakeholders with the opportunity to ask questions, provide updates on how they're experiencing change. Inputs include a project plan, communication plan, stakeholder engagement plan, and outputs include communication delivery. Next, we'll look at executing sponsorship plan. Sponsorship is most successful when leaders recognize the people side of change and visibly participate with stakeholders throughout the project. The change sponsor builds awareness directly with stakeholders regarding the need for the change. The change management team reviews the role of sponsorship with each leader involved in the change initiative and provides change management coaching where needed. Coaching should address the needs for sponsors to understand their role, responsibilities, and expectations, and include identifiable actions that visibly support successful change. Examples of good sponsorship activities and common sponsor mistakes. Sponsors should also receive prepared communications guidance for delivering messages to stakeholder groups. The change management lead should provide the sponsor with regular updates on the change initiative status. This helps sustain sponsor engagement. Inputs include the sponsorship plan, communication plan, stakeholder engagement plan. Outputs are sponsor activities and the sponsor competency building activities. Now let's take a look at the executing the stakeholder engagement plan. Effective stakeholder engagement is critical to ensure successful execution of the change management plan. The stakeholder engagement plan establishes the tasks needed to be executed to ensure that all stakeholders understand and adopt the change. Executing the plan will significantly reduce uncertain consequences and identify the benefits of the change for stakeholders. Effective plan execution will enable stakeholders to adopt the change swiftly and with lowered resistance, while understanding its benefits to the organization and individual stakeholder. Addressing and managing resistance to ensure a successful transition to the future state should engage a number of leaders within the organization. Key aspects of job roles, performance management, learning needs, and organizational development resources should be considered and reviewed regularly throughout the change initiative. These reviews should involve regular communication with leaders and supporting functions as needed to ensure resistance is properly managed. Inputs include stakeholder engagement plan, sponsorship plan, communications plan. Outputs, stakeholder engagement activities, sponsor engagement activities, and resistance management activities. Next, execute learning and development plan. Change initiatives require active management of the learning process to increase stakeholder skills and develop required competencies through appropriate learning activities. Learning and development may include training and development activities as well as evaluating knowledge, skills, and attitudes before and after learning activities. First step is defining learning objectives. Learning objectives should be clearly stated, measurable, realistic, and appropriate to the level of learning. They should be consistent with the objectives of the change management strategy and define what the learner will know or be able to do because of the learning activity. They should provide a basis to evaluate learner achievement. Executing learning and development plan. As stated in the learning and development plan, each learning group has unique curriculum that will be executed. The first step in executing the plan is to ensure that learning materials supporting the curriculum are developed, for example, job aids, user manuals, quick reference guides. Second, the logistics of the learning activity for each group must be completed according to the delivery method and timeline, for example, booking a conference room, setting up an online meeting. Lastly, the curriculum is delivered to the specified group according to the plan. As stated in the learning and development strategy, there may be other resources such as an outside vendor delivering the learning activity. Third, evaluating the learning activities. Measuring the success of learning and development activities demonstrates whether the participants learned the necessary skills. The objectives developed prior to delivery will serve as the basis for the evaluation. Not all learning activities will deliver the expected benefits, possibly because a lesson was misunderstood, misapplied, or was not applicable to the situation or audience. Learning activities that do not produce the expected benefits should be reevaluated and then modified or removed. Learning measurement should determine what knowledge was obtained, the skills that were developed or improved, and the frequency and effectiveness with which the new knowledge and skills are used on the job. It may also identify if attitudes have changed. A variety of methods can be used to evaluate the effects of learning, including learner reactions, supervisor observations, and performance appraisals. Evaluation should show both the intangible and tangible indicators resulting from the learning and developing activity. Tangible indicators include skills and knowledge, job performance, productivity, response time, sales volume and service levels, and requests for help. Intangible indicators include effective communication, quality of decision making, conducive teamwork, job satisfaction, stress rate. Inputs to the learning and development plan include the learning and development plan itself, change resources, roles and responsibilities plan, and supporting learning and development materials, for example, job aids. Outputs are the learning and performance evaluation reports. Next, we'll look at executing measurement and benefit realization. Accurate measurements provide an indication of the level of stakeholder adoption, degree of stakeholder preparedness, including knowledge and ability, and the success of the change project. The measurements should be communicated to all sponsors and project leads. Processes can be adapted based on the measurement outcomes to ensure that goals are met. Some key aspects include tracking and measuring benefits. This process involves tracking and measuring the benefits against targets to ensure changes are aligned with organizational objectives and expected benefits as described in a business case. It involves measuring against the baseline data and target, charting progress, and reviewing the effectiveness of the benefits management. Also includes informing stakeholders of progress and benefits realization and assessing the performance of the change organizational operations against performance baselines. Progress must be continually monitored during execution to test and assess stakeholder awareness of change and therefore successive communications. To understand the change benefits and determine the wider change impact. This monitoring can provide an estimate of the stakeholder engagement with the support of the change. Monitoring progress allows the change management team to report results, track the progress by individual stakeholder segments using appropriate techniques, and by monitoring staff turnover, absences, tardiness, and other factors. Effective monitoring of progress provides the necessary information for the committee of a stakeholder representatives to make decisions to adjust the course of execution. The change management lead should report frequently and honestly on the status of the change. This individual should describe progress in the previous period, impediments currently being encountered, and potential barriers to progress. Communication should use appropriate channels. Feedback from stakeholders provides evidence of benefits achieved to date, those still to be achieved, and any that are no longer valid. Benefits realization involves achieving adoption of planned changes by impacted stakeholders as the first step towards benefits realization. Adoption of planned changes or successfully changing the way in which people think, act, and behave to align with the future state should result in achieving organizational outcomes. For example, improved customer experience, improved efficiency, increased skill level of employees. When combined, these intended organizational outcomes should lead to realization of the intended benefits outlined in the business case. For example, increased sales, cost savings, or improved market share. Executing the plan for measurement and reporting of the progress towards change readiness, adoption, achievement of organizational outcomes, benefit realization should involve participation from the impacted business unit in order to gain input and agreement on the measurements and results. This involvement is also important in facilitating the potential transfer of accountability for measurement and reporting required for a time extended beyond a change practitioner's involvement. Inputs include the change management plan, measurement and benefits realization plan. Outputs include measurement and benefits realization reports and benefit realization activities. Executing the sustainability plan. Change must be continually managed to achieve sustainable results through adoption of the change and associated values, principles, and processes. Executing the sustainability plan should trigger activities and mechanisms required to cultivate a culture that will sustain the change once it's been implemented and determined to be effective, and to help ensure that it is not a retreat to the prior current state condition. Activities and mechanisms should minimally include the following components: communication, mechanisms for persuasive communication, ongoing socialization of the change, rites of parting, saying goodbye to the old ways of doing things, and rites of enhancement, acknowledgement of quick wins and continued adoption. Metrics tracking, consistent and effective process for sustaining measurement results, reporting to track progress and ensure results. Performance management, consistent process for observing and objectively measuring sustained behaviors and attitudes, including a performance appraisal process, promoting, demoting, and transferring, and learning and development. Rewards and recognition, program of intrinsic and extrinsic incentives to sustain and achieve behaviors and attitudes. Sustaining ownership, consistent process for ensuring sustained ownership of the change through the ongoing transfer of experience and knowledge. Continuous improvement, mechanisms for responding to changing requirements and implementing improvements based on feedback, observations, and metrics. Inputs include the sustainability plan and measurement baselines. Outputs include communication events, benefit reviews, business performance reports, and evaluations and reviews. And finally, modifying the change management plan as required is a common thing throughout the change lifecycle. We do this in order to ensure that outcomes remain correctly aligned with the organization's needs. Change leaders need to review objectives and make the adjustments necessary to maintain momentum and deliver results. Adjustments may include adding, eliminating, or realigning change program component to reinforce the change or decrease or accelerate change in response to internal and external pressures. Changes to deliverables should be controlled through formal procedures that are aligned with the organization's change control framework. Once a change to the change management plan or strategy has been approved, then the decision should be communicated to all relevant stakeholders. Inputs include the change management plan, project schedule and plan, and outputs are the change management plan updated.